right, so for the people online at the moment, that's Anira. I think you're the only person who's here interested in studying the master's program, which is great. Welcome. Nandra and Patricia are from the faculty office and are here to answer questions towards the second half of the presentation. If you guys want to ask questions about things like funding and how the courses work.
Okay.
I am standing like this so that the camera can catch me because it's over there. Yeah. I look very small, but I am here. Hello, everyone. And of course, to you in the room, you can see me clearly. As Gaby was explaining, previously we've done a general info session about the master's program. This year, we're trying to do sessions for the specializations. This is international law. And Salome is here to answer questions about the human rights courses. And she might just misuse some of this time to tell you about the human rights program as well. Because I don't know if you have a separate slot for that, do you?
No.
Aha. So we need to be careful of her, right?
But it did be misused, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let me start by showing the little video that the digital media unit helped me to prepare. Hello, my name is Kathy Powell. I teach international law at the University of Cape Town. And I'm involved in the teaching of the International Law Master's Program. I'm here to tell you about it. Let's start with what international law means before we get into the nitty-gritty of our own program. I'll ask you to call up an image that international law evokes in your mind. Is it this one? Is it war? That's a possibility. International law involves the relations between states and what they can and can't do to each other. But there's more to it. International law has a strong institutional organizational element. Here you're seeing the United Nations, which is how states together try to regulate how states individually work. Another institution is the International Court of Justice, one of the many topics that we cover in our program. International trade. Here you've got a ship transporting goods across the high seas. And then back to war, but I'm thinking here more of the regional aspect. These are pictures from the conflict in Sudan. And then international law also means this, its effect on human beings. Here we have international law expressed through refugee programs and refugee law. Which of these do you think international law is, and which ones would you like to study in your master's? Well, now we get to the boring bit. If you come to UCT and you want to see what international law study means here, have a look at this link and those pages. I'm going to take you through our handbook to show you what perspectives we offer on international law. That is the bit of the handbook that you want to consult for our international law master's program. Notice it's an LLM and an MPhil. You do the LLM if you already have a law degree. You do the MPhil if you do not yet have a law degree, which means we do accept postgraduate students from other disciplines. You will see if you look at the range of courses that we offer within our international law program that some of them are about trade and commerce. Some of them are about foundational rules of international law. And some of them are about human rights law. I don't want to exclude environmental law, which is also part of our program. And environmental law, as you will see, can play a role in the more commercial perspective on international law and in the human rights perspective. And it can be a program all by itself. That is the range of courses that we offer if you want to do a master's in international law. None of the courses are obligatory, which means you can choose the particular angle that you want to follow. Here I have drawn out the 3 courses that can be bracketed into a focal study of commerce at an international level. If you want to look most closely at environmental law, you could look at that, the course itself, but also environmental law with law of the sea. Similarly, as I said, environmental law can tie in with all our human rights courses: rights of the child, protection of human rights, and protection of women's human rights. So you can see that whichever perspective you had of international law at the beginning is one you can probably follow if you join the program. I'm going to take you back to the full page from the handbook where we show you all the courses that you can do for international law. And I want to explain what you have to do in addition. So you would need to do 4 of the courses that we offer, any 4 from that list, as well as a research component, which for international law will be a minor thesis, a thesis of maximum 25,000 words. When you have done all 4 of those, plus your thesis has been passed, you will have either an LLM or an MPhil from the University of Cape Town. Okay, both Salona Lichman, who handles the human rights courses, and I do the sort of international law pure courses, are available to answer questions. Gaby's here. Do we want to play the PowerPoint on funding, or will we wait for questions? Okay. And hello, newcomers.
Hello.
And, we can also ask questions of the faculty office, and they are online and will answer. So, are there any questions? You guys have just missed an incredible little video presentation. It was stunning. Had me. It was about international law and how you can do it at UCT, because it's a broad program, and you can do either a commercial focus or a international law pure focus. International criminal law does come into that as well, and or a human rights focus, all within international law as a program in our masters. And we've got somebody here who can tell you more about the human rights courses as well. So, are there any questions? Yes.
I think for me, as I understand it, or from your video, you can combine any of those courses together to make up what's the maximum amount. So if you have if you are really interested in like human rights, but you also want to do like you said, environmental, can you do more than 4 courses, or are you like limited?
You need a session to be allowed to do more than 4.
Okay.
And you need a very good reason. We haven't granted, I think the only time we've granted that concession is when somebody doesn't do well enough in a course to move on to the course that they had planned, and then they have to add a 5th course.
Okay.
But usually we don't want you to overload yourself.
Okay.
So it's 4 courses out of the basket plus the minor dissertation.
Okay.
Yes.
A few questions. Right.
Go for it.
How long in advance should we apply? And
Faculty office, how long in advance should prospective students apply for master's study? Patricia.
Hi, Kathy, it's Patricia speaking. Students who want to apply for master's studies should apply by the 31st of September.
For the following year.
For the following year, that's correct.
Thank you. Next.
Can I just comment on that?
Sure.
So if you are wanting to do one of the LLM programs next year, you're in final year.
Yeah.
Yes. Then Patricia said 31st, but it's obviously the 30th it's a hard deadline. You have to have applied by then. If you go onto the School for Advanced Legal Studies website, all the application details and links to the UCT's online platform and so on, it's all there.
Sure. Next question.
Would you recommend doing the LLM right after an OLB, or doing articles first and then coming and doing an LLM? Or
The question, which I will try to answer, but I'm happy to get other input, is would I recommend doing an LLM straight after the LLB, or rather doing articles first, or I presume even something else first? I'll give my take on it, but I think that it's very different from person to person. If you want to do articles and you want to go into practice long term, it's probably better to do the LLM first. Would you agree, Simone? Rather than to do articles, get admitted, and then interrupt professional life to go back and study. If you are not sure where you want to go next, then an LLM is also a good idea as the next step, because it helps you work out what really interests you and where you want to go. You see which subjects work for you, and those doing an LLM offers more career prospects than just having an LLB. The only time I'd say give it a break is if you're not actually sure you want to study. I don't think you should do an LLM to fill another year. But if you're doing it to equip yourself further or to explore things that you're interested in, I see no reason not to go straight there. You're still in the habit of studying at least. So, Lona, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think you know, if you pursue it straight after your LLB, it can help to focus your interests for what you choose to get into later. It can help to improve your marketability as well. But I also think that sometimes, I mean, at least in my experience, working, so I actually didn't do my LLM straight after the LLB. I actually needed that time to work and to figure out what I wanted to do, and to also just grow up a little bit, I think, and get a little bit mature about my research, because it is a commitment. You know, you've got to, especially the minor dissertation, which Kathy's going to talk about. You know, it's the longest, you know, piece of research that you would have done. You wouldn't have done something as long in your LLB. So you need to be focused and committed to completing it in addition to your subject. So it does require some commitment.
Anybody else? Our two newcomers, you missed the presentation. So do you have a rough idea of what the international law LLM program looks like? Okay. Well, I'm going to, let me show you.
Maybe just one page from the handbook.
I'm calling up the page from the handbook. This is not for the people online because they saw that one already. But for the people in the room, let me take you to the handbook page. Wait, slideshow. Okay, that is the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 courses are the basket of courses that we offer for international law masters. You can do any form, none of them are compulsory. Together with those 4 that you choose, you have to do a minor dissertation. In my presentation, I pointed out that this basket gives you the chance to specialize a bit, either the commercial angle or the sort of classical international law angle with maybe international criminal law attached to it, and then human rights. There is, however, a human rights LLM program with a slightly different basket, and there's an international trade program. So this is more the basket that tries to pick up international law per se, rather than trade or human rights.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Yes, you may ask a question.
Thank you. What would an LLM in international law kind of qualify you for or skill you for in terms of legal practice? Like what issues would you be tackling?
In terms of working at an attorney's firm, I don't think every attorney's firm has a special place for an international lawyer, unless you're looking at people who've qualified mainly in international trade, international commercial transactions, those kinds of things, and they're a law firm with foreign clients. So that's where you'd go where sort of normal law firms are concerned. This is also the sort of education that fits people for the diplomatic service, for work for the government, for work for parliament, for NGOs, and that's also where we add the human rights courses. Gabe is decided to show everybody. Good, okay. And it's also the kind of education that is a very good springboard for academic exchanges elsewhere. Not even necessarily a PhD, but simply, for example, one of our former master's students is now doing a second master's at the University of Peking. And this training was a very good background to then exploring other issues. And from there, I'm just thinking I should share with you all, if you give me your names afterwards. There was a job advert that I was sent to help set up a program to capture human rights violations in a form that can be used in court. I should send this to you, Salome. That's the sort of thing that an LLM is going to equip you to do. There is an organization that has produced an app that can film in such a way that what you film cannot be, what's the word? It can't be manipulated. So that whatever you film is fit for court. And for that they want somebody who's got ideally a master's background. That's the kind of master's background they're going to be looking for. Somebody to set up that human rights initiative. So it's a very imaginative scope that opens up when you've got something like this. It's not really what you think of for just any law firm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you are interested in a field, for example, I'm really interested in like social justice, humanitarian law, but more in an international, like UN or EU type of vibes. This is
a good place for you to be.
Good place to be, because I doubt that they just accept anybody with a straight LLB.
Yes.
You have to specialize.
Specialization in what they deal with, which is international law itself at a deeper level than you did in your LLB, and international organizations and international criminal law and international humanitarian law, which are not course names here, but they come into the courses if you look up the details on those courses.
And just on that point, would you say that it was better for like future job security in this specific field, that it's better to like do an exchange program to diversify your portfolio, or is it necessarily that important?
I think that is so dependent on where you want to go.
Okay.
And where you can find. I think exchange and travel is a very good idea. And the nice thing about international law is how shareable it is.
Yes.
That you can take anywhere, and you can exchange with anywhere because you're all talking the same language. Okay. Do you want to add to that, Selena?
No, so you're talking about semester abroad type things.
Yeah.
I think it maybe you should speak to, if you know of others who have taken that opportunity, you should speak to them from firsthand kind of experience. But from my own understanding of it, I think it would be largely beneficial. You're learning about, for instance, I studied international law in the US, and so that experience is quite different to learning about international law from an African context, etc. So you learn about international law, which governs all states, supposed to govern all states, and how it governs states, but you learn it from that particular local context. So it can only be beneficial, I think, but I think it really depends on what your interest is.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
You can ask lots of questions.
So for me, I'm an intermediate year now, so I need to choose electives by obviously
end of the year.
End of the year. So which electives would be better elective to choose that would complement these? Because I know we have there's international criminal law, he did it as well.
Yes.
But are there any others that are?
Selena, your turn to talk.
Yeah.
Is this for final? Yeah.
Final
Yeah.
LLB then.
Firstly, I think it's great that you're thinking so strategically, thinking ahead, because I think those kinds of decisions do help your application when you do apply to do a master's. So I take an elective, which you, Joshua was in my class, International Human Rights and the Constitution. And so we look at international human rights law from a South African perspective, and we link it to the South African Constitution. How is it implicated, if at all, in the Constitution, etc. There is an elective on pertaining to international criminal law. I think there's also an elective on human rights type elective, social justice and the Constitution. But I don't think there are any other international law-based electives in our department that I can speak of offhand.
No, I'm not familiar with the LLB offerings. I think you should look through the electives, and if there's anything you really want to do, it's probably going to fit with your master's. You know, if it's something you're interested in, it's going to fit in with the other stuff you're interested in.
Yeah.
But it's a good idea to try and find the international law and the human rights programs at this point already, and really final year is the only chance we give you.
Yeah.
So make the most of it.
Yeah, I'm not done with refugee law, which
There's refugee law, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot
Sorry, I
about
forgot about that too.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's a question online. Can someone with no law background do international law? Does that make sense? And
Yes,
international
it
law
does.
is there.
Hi, is that Samira?
It was actually non-dwell who asked.
Okay. The question is, can somebody without a legal background do international law? Yes, you can. That was why, and that's something we emphasized in the presentation. This is both an LLM and an MPhil option. And it's called an MPhil if you do it without an LLB background. If you are going to do it without a legal background, you sometimes have a bit of catching up. And I know when I'm teaching international law in theory and practice, I sort of set some time aside to try help people understand legal method, because it's a particular kind of thinking that LLB students have eventually just, you know, they just inhaled it, they just do it. If you're not an LLB person, you might need a bit of help, but it can be done. And in fact, there was one year when I taught international law and disputes and the use of force, I had a very good class, but the two brightest and best and highest performing were both non-law students. One was international relations and the other one I can't remember, but neither of them had a law degree, and they just flew. Yeah. So it doesn't mean you're not going to do well if you don't have a law background. You just need to adjust in those early days while you're learning how to think like a lawyer. You guys don't even know what that means anymore because you're so used to thinking like a lawyer, but it is something different from what non-lawyers know. Yes, Joshua?
what should our marks be?
To get in.
Yeah.
Getting Patricia, what should people's marks be to get in? Can you talk to us?
I can, yes. Applications are all considered by a committee. So what students have to do is to submit a motivation, their CV and academic transcripts if they are not UCT students. Students with a GPA of 70% are admitted immediately. And students with GPAs of between 60 to 69% are considered by the committee. And there's various factors that gets taken into account, but if you in the ballpark of 60 to 69%, you will highly likely that you'll be admitted to the program. Does that answer?
And if you're below 60%?
Then your motivation, your work experience, and other factors that may be requested by the committee will get taken into account. That's why the motivation is critical. Students who are below 60% may also be advised to register for the postgraduate diploma if that program is on offer in the specific area that they want to work in.
Thank you, Patricia. Any other questions?
Are you two who joined a little bit later, final years? Intermediate, okay.
Selena, would you like to talk about the human rights law program a bit?
Sure. So
Maybe come sit here and stand or something.
okay.
We're going to try to find it online.
That'd be great. Thanks. You can find it's in the handbook
Yeah.
page.
Okay.
I think it's
There's a link to the handbook in my PowerPoint, remember?
or 115.
Yeah, we'll find it. Right there. It's the previous slide. There. And then it's going to be roughly page 1 is fine.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm the convener of the Human Rights Program. And so if you choose to apply for an LLM or an MPhil, so the same options as with the international program, your application at some point will come past me. So the Human Rights Program, you have to also do 4 courses. There are 4 courses that you have to take, but the configuration of it is a little bit different. There are 3, there's a basket of courses that we call compulsory courses, and of that you have to choose 3, and then 1 elective course. And when it's up on the screen, I'll show it to you. In addition, you have to write your minor dissertation. Okay. Also, quite a wide variety of courses on offer.
Gabby, you got it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks so much. So you'll see here, so this first basket, you have to choose at least 3 courses from that first basket. So that's International Rights of the Child, International Protection of Human Rights, International Protection of Women's Human Rights, Refugee Law and Human Rights, Human Rights, Legal Pluralism, Religion and Culture, Litigating South African Bill of Rights, Punishment and Human Rights. So of those courses, you have to choose 3. And in the second basket, you have to choose 1. You could, if you wanted to, take all 4 from the first basket and none from the second basket. That's fine, but you have to choose at least, at a minimum, 3 from that first basket. And so the reason for requiring you to choose courses mainly from that first basket is because the characteristic of that of the degree is human rights. And so we want you to have a good, solid foundation on what the international human rights framework looks like, with allowing you to have some specialization. So you'll see in the elective options, there's international law courses, international law in theory and practice, international law in disputes and use of force, but also courses from other disciplines. So there's a constitutional law course, sexual offences and the law, administrative law courses from the criminology program, police and policing, victims and victimology, and criminal process and human rights. So you can choose the kind of specialization is, if you want to call it that, or the angle really that you want to have for your LLM or MPhil. Another thing I try to encourage students to do when applying for the LLM or MPhil in human rights law is to pay attention to when the courses are offered, first semester and second semester. I think it's always a better idea if you have your courses spaced out, so 2 courses in the first semester and 2 in the second semester. It makes a big difference to the workload you carry throughout the year, so that it's an even load, because you have to also carry the minor dissertation. But I think we have a wonderful program. Lots of experienced teachers on the program, interesting material covered, very contemporary issues. And it also attracts many international students, the International Human Rights Program. So it's often, it's quite a wonderful experience in the classroom to have students from other parts of the world contributing and making for a very rich classroom environment. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I don't have a nice presentation like Kat did. Any questions? Any? Yeah.
So I don't know if either of you are going to talk about the different degree structures. So there's the professional LLM.
Not available
Yeah.
in our area.
Yeah.
So in neither. So the professional masters is just 4 courses and you do 4 research papers with each course, but there's no dissertation component.
But that's not offered in either international law
Yeah.
or human rights
Yeah.
law at this stage.
Okay.
We are thinking of producing a professional master's, but we haven't got it yet.
Sorry, this might seem weird. What is a professional? What's the difference between a LLM and a professional master?
Well, they're both masters, but the professional masters has less focus on research.
Okay.
So you don't write a dissertation. There's a research task attached to each course, but there's no separate dissertation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's generally focused on people who definitely going to go into practice, whereas the classical masters is for people who may go into academia or may continue on research-based work.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it a 1 or 2 year program?
If you manage to get your thesis done in time, it's a 1-year program. It is quite common not to get your thesis done in 1 year. But if you register in February 2025, for example, the date that you're supposed to hand your thesis in will be February 2026. So that's 1 year. Extensions are generally granted for the thesis, but the coursework should be finished and done within a year.
I remember seeing an article last year about commercial law student whose master's was converted to a PhD. Is that something that has ever happened in like public law or in the international law field?
So that would be in an instance where you are completing a master's by dissertation, right? So the master's programs we are talking about here are masters by coursework and dissertation. So a master's by dissertation is where you don't do any coursework. You write a dissertation which is 40,000 words, so it's almost double the length of this dissertation. It's 40,000 words, and in very rare instances does a master's dissertation get upgraded. You still have to, I mean, a PhD is 80,000 words, so one has to write substantially double the amount of
What can happen, and it has happened in public law, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that the student tackles a master's thesis, and it's a thesis forming the whole of the degree, there's no coursework, and tackles a complex topic. And as he or she researches further, it becomes clear that too much is involved here to deal with neatly within the space of a master's size thesis. And so with the supervisor's consent, the whole thing gets upgraded to a PhD. That is possible.
Yeah.
But also quite rare.
It's rare and it's bloody difficult.
Yeah.
So don't aim to sneak into a PhD that way. You should go into a PhD with open eyes and clear intentions from the beginning. And you would be much helped by having a master's first. The master's by coursework plus dissertation is a much more humane way of getting a master's, because you're studying courses in more depth that are going to equip you to do the thesis, rather than having to make the thesis up all by yourself cold. Okay.
but it is.
It is possible. If you want to try it that way, go for it. Actually, I saw a very interesting and encouraging little meme somewhere. Well, it was a social media interaction where one student said, you know, this work is so interesting. It makes me want to update my master's into a PhD, but I'll be almost 40 by the time I'm finished. And the response from the other person was, you'll be 40 anyway.
That's true.
And I thought that's one hell of a good point. You're not going to stop aging by not doing a PhD. So you might as well use the time with what you're interested in, but make sure you're interested in it. I like that. Yeah.
I have some info to share on funding, if this is a point where we can do that. And I hope that the faculty office and Kathy and Salona will correct any wildly incorrect
I probably won't spot them, but
info that I share. There's UCT's, can you all see? There's UCT's postgraduate hub. It's a critical source of info. It's got they do consults. You can book appointments, go and have discussions with them. They can take you through funding options. They can take you through degree program options. They really are a great place to go and kind of find out information that you might not otherwise realize is available. They've got a web presence. They've got a great Twitter account where they share all sorts of things, particularly scholarship opportunities. And now, particularly for those who are still in third year, it's a great time to just start getting a sense of what's available, because each scholarship opportunity has its own conditions and deadlines, and if you miss it, you miss it. I think one of the key deadlines is around the National Research Foundation's application process, but I'll come back to that. And the reason that I raise them particularly is because you used to have to go through UCT to be able to apply to the NRA. I don't know if that's still the case. They seem to have set up a new system. Do either of you know?
no idea.
Okay.
Sorry.
But ask the UCT postgraduate hub, go to their office. I can make this info available to all of you. I will post it in a way that you will be able to access it. I'll share it with the final year and intermediate year class. I think the main thing to remember about funding is that if you don't ask, you won't get. It's just that simple. And I suspect that a lot of students don't apply because they, for some other reason, think they're not eligible. So I'm not saying slam all the scholarships with your applications just because you must now apply. Just, you know, check out what the criteria are, make sure you are eligible, but don't exclude yourself if you're not sure. Chat to the postgrad office. There are, I think the other key fact is that if you miss your application deadlines in the year leading up to your year of study, so for final years now for next year, for intermediates next year for the following year, it's almost impossible from what I've seen to get funding in the year of study, and even less possible, if that's possible, more impossible to attract any kind of funding for fee debt, where you're trying to pay off your master's fees to get your degree. So it really is pretty critical that you check out what's available and when the application deadlines are. The faculty offers quite a wide range of scholarships, and they are all on the faculty site and also on the School for Advanced Legal Studies site. Some of those scholarships have demographic and geographic limits. So, for example, we've got a postgraduate, it's actually for a PhD, but it's for women students looking at kind of issues of social justice and so on. So there are those kind of limits, but there are lots of scholarships that don't have any geographic or demographic limits. The faculty scholarships are very competitive, just because there's a huge number of faculty-based students who are looking for that funding. But faculty is offering scholarship-wise is only one of many. So cast your eyes far and wide and just keep scouring. I think the postgrad scholarships application call is going out in November now. It was happening a little bit later. But we're trying to bring all our applications forward so that we can inform students before they start studying. With postgrad, that doesn't always happen. And it has been that there's students only find out once they've actually registered. So and sometimes they weren't successful. So it's a little bit, you're kind of taking a risk there. But again, just keep an eye on all the deadlines. I think it's important to note that there are very limited opportunities for scholarships for professional masters, but because you're here for international and human rights and you can't do professional masters,
you're in luck.
But just bear it in mind. And there are no scholarship opportunities that I know of for postgrad diplomas. So again, just something to bear in mind. The National Research Foundation is the other funding body. They used to only fund research degrees, but I think they fund coursework and dissertation now. But again, you'll need to go and check out all those details. But they're an excellent funder, and they, I think, fund quite well. There are just age limits, so you have to be 20 for masters. You have to be younger than 30. And I think, you have to be younger than 30 in the year you apply, even if it's in your second year of study. So there's an age limit for NRA.
They do cover coursework.
They do?
Yeah,
It's
and the students, the students who's covered.
Okay, so that's quite exciting actually, because it's a whole other avenue of possible funding.
Zanira, welcome back. We're talking about funding of postgraduate studies. If any of you have a question, feel free to pop it in chat or raise a hand. We can see you now, or just yell. Switch your mutes off and yell.
Yeah.
Thank you. Joshua has a question.
Yeah.
That's all. One thing I've heard is if you become a teaching assistant in this faculty, I heard something that you get 50.
Fee rebate.
Staff fee rebate for staff, yes.
Is that still applicable?
Yes.
Okay.
I know because you have to be working at least 20 hours a week to get the rebate.
Okay.
I had to deal with that at the beginning of the year. So yes, there is a fee rebate. I don't know, I'm not sure exactly how much it is, but it is substantial.
When you're in final year, keep an eye out for the calls for teaching assistants. I think they start going out kind of September-ish.
Don't look at me, I'm a new one.
Okay, yeah, but all the final years do get alerted to the call, as far as I know. So otherwise pop into one of the departmental admin, well, I guess public law.
Yeah.
But no, you generally
don't actually, we do have people who are TA in another department, but they're doing their masters in public law. It is possible.
Yeah. So
yes, keep an eye open for all the opportunities.
Yeah. Or pop in at the faculty office and ask. Yeah. And then I just had a couple of top tips. So number one is look at UCT's handbook number 14. And if you Google UCT handbooks, the page pops up, handbook 14. That is around postgraduate scholarships and funding. And just trawl page by page and see what looks like it's an option. Keep your marks up, obviously, because all of these scholarships, all of them are competitive. The NRF has a minimum GPA. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it is all about that. I don't think there's any funding at a postgrad level that is comparable to like a NSFAS structure where it's about your financial circumstances less than it's about your marks. By the time you get to postgrad, it's basically all of the marks. Gather as much info as you can, ask for help, and apply. That's basically, that's it on funding. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've covered the International Law Master's Program. We've covered the Human Rights, International Law Human Rights Master's Program. We've looked at the question of funding. We've tried to show you how the coursework plus dissertation masters works and looks. Are there any questions, any more questions from the room? Any more questions or any questions from online? I'm looking straight at the Teams meeting, so if you do want to say something or drop a question, I will see it. Okay, well, you will know where to find us. I see that when this meeting was advertised on Twitter, you gave my Twitter handle, Gaby. I'm just not sure whether my email address turns up at the same time. But if you look for me, at the University of Cape Town Law Faculty, Kathleen Powell, Chathleen, Kathleen Powell. You will find my contact details. The faculty office obviously is also available for questions.